bring more Brits into the workforce and help UK firms hire UK workers. That's the Shadow Home Secretary's new plan to tackle a familiar problem, reducing migration. The net figure through UK borders last year was 685,000. Labour want to bring that down, but won't set a target.
It has already trebled as a result of the Conservatives' really sort of free-for-all approach that they've had to overseas recruitment. We would take a different approach. We'd say that overseas recruitment needs to be linked to training and action and workforce plans to tackle the skills shortages here at home. It just can't make any sense to have a doubling of engineering visas and a halving of engineering apprenticeships.
What Labour don't really want to talk about is Diane Abbott, who tonight confirmed she will stand for Labour, but claims the party is trying to get rid of left-wing candidates aren't going away.
By any means possible.
The Conservatives focused on healthcare today, pledging to build 100 new GP surgeries, a plan a bit reminiscent of the controversial pledge at the last general election to build 40 new hospitals.
Announcement was made in 2019. We then were hit immediately afterwards by the pandemic. Of course, that took its toll both on the National Health Service and on the construction industry. But we are committed to meeting our target by the end of the decade. And indeed, we have today 6 new hospitals open. We have 2 more that are going to open by the end of the year. And we have 18 in construction.
The Lib Dem leader's built up his stuntman portfolio over the past week. Today, his deputy wasted no time attacking the Tories for their healthcare record.
Honestly, I don't think that anybody will think that these pledges are worth the paper that they're written on. The fact is that the Conservatives pledged to recruit 6,000 GPs and then broke that promise. They pledged to build 40 hospitals and they've broken that promise. Time and time again, they break their promises on the NHS and social care. And I think most people know what the reality is. They can't see a GP, they can't see a dentist. They're waiting in pain on long waiting lists and their local hospitals are crumbling. The Liberal Democrats are putting health and social care front and centre of our campaign.
A quieter day on the election trail as both main party leaders look towards their first TV debate of the campaign on Tuesday night.
Well, earlier I spoke to Shadow Education Secretary Bridget Phillipson. I began by asking her about Labour's pledge to reform the current apprenticeship levy in order to train up more UK workers and how it would all be funded.
Well, at the moment, through the apprenticeship levy, lots of that money isn't being spent by employers. And what I've been hearing about this morning is how, with the right support and with that flexibility that Labour will introduce, employers will be able to spend more of that on training opportunities for young people, but also to upskill their workforce.
But how would you persuade businesses that it's better for them to, to take the time and the care and the money to train someone up locally as opposed to bringing someone in from outside?
Businesses are very much on board with what we're saying, and they're increasingly frustrated about the limitations that are placed on them by the current system.
Let's talk about migration. Keir Starmer made a big announcement about migration today, as did Yvette Cooper, the Shadow Home Secretary, saying they want to bring those numbers down. There's not a single politician on this planet who doesn't want to bring those numbers down, but he failed to mention the specifics, either timing or actual quotas. So what's the point?
So we do want to bring net migration down, and part of the way in which we will do that is by having a better skills system that provides more training opportunities for young people and also more opportunities for adults, whether that's in engineering or in manufacturing.
What about the care sector?
Absolutely, in the care sector too, because
the care sector can't survive without foreign labour.
That's also a question about wider reform that we want to deliver in terms of employment practices too. Yes, it's about skills, but it's also about good terms and conditions for people at work. And everything that we're saying about Labour's reforms of the employment system would also provide more dignity at work for people and more security too.
You've had a pretty tough week in the campaign. I know it's early days, but it's not been a great week for you, mainly because of the kind of back and forth over Diane Abbott. I talked to one member of the NEC yesterday who said it was disgraceful.
I think we want to make sure that there are really strong candidates right across the board, and that has been a priority for us. But I tell you, when I've been out knocking
Diane Abbott is a very strong candidate. She's got a massive majority, which keeps getting bigger.
And Keir has said that she can be a candidate in the election.
Belatedly. It took him quite a long time to get there, only when Angela Rayner said she should run.
I'll tell you what I've heard from voters, whether it's in Edinburgh, where I was earlier this week, in Sunderland and, in Hexham. I've been to lots of our key seats right across the country. What I hear there is people want action on NHS waiting lists. They want cheaper bills, and we'll deliver that through a Labour government with Great British Energy. And they want more police on their streets to tackle antisocial behaviour.
But a lot of Labour voters also want a party that is true to their principles. And what they see in Keir Starmer is a control freak. That's what they're telling us, who is more afraid of headlines in the Daily Mail than he is to basically be true to Labour values.
What Labour voters want is a Labour government, and they want us to transform our country.
So where's the difference between you and the Tories? And there's lots of continuity in terms of policy, just different personnel.
I think there are lots and lots of differences, and voters are clear about that too. 6,500 more teachers, 13,000 more neighbourhood police officers and PCSOs, cutting NHS waiting lists, bringing down people's energy bills, more skills training.
Much of that is what the Tories are telling us.
Well, it's not happening. If that's what they're telling you, it's not happening.
And you'll be able to make it happen without any money in the kitty?
They've had 14 years to deliver on all of this, and they have failed. And that's what I hear from voters right across the country. They want to turn a corner, to end Tory chaos and to get our country back on track, and that's what a Labour government will deliver. Just one more on Diane Abbott, if I may. There's a rumour out there, a report, actually in one of the newspapers, that she might have been offered a peerage, a seat in the House of Lords, in order to keep her quiet and not run for her seat. Is that true? Well, I have no knowledge of that. There is a process when anyone is put forward for a peerage that applies to all parties. There are a process to go through to determine whether they are an appropriate candidate for a peerage. So was there a process with her? I have nothing to say on that, in that I wouldn't know. I wouldn't be involved in any of those kinds of conversations. But for all parties, where decisions of that kind are taken, there is a process that is gone through in terms of appointments and scrutiny and vetting, and that's right and proper. But is the whole logic behind the treatment of Diane Abbott that this is something to reassure wavering Conservative voters, reassure the kind of middle centre right ground of British politics? So some of your own lot under the bus in order to get their votes? No, this is about making sure that we've kind of gone through that full process, that there was an issue that has now been dealt with in terms of Diane's actions, and that has been responded to accordingly. And of course, with all candidates, that is a process that has to happen as well, and the NEC, the Labour's National Executive Committee, will have a process by which all candidates are endorsed. It was just there wasn't a process in the end. There was no conclusion to the investigation. She was just allowed to run when there was enough fuss made by people like Angela Rayner in the party. Well, there's kind of two separate things going on. There was the process by which the whip was restored to Diane, and then we're all of us now going through the process of being endorsed as candidates for the general election. That's as it should be. Bridget Phillipson, thank you very much. The SNP has formally launched its election campaign at a rally in Glasgow. New leader John Swinney urged people to put Scotland's interests first as he turned his fire on both the Conservatives and Labour. He branded the Tory government disastrous and chaotic and accused Labour, which is surging ahead in the polls in Scotland, of giving an awfully good impression of the Conservatives. Our chief correspondent Alex Thompson reports from Glasgow.
I said, are you guys ready for this? Come on, Glasgow.
Baptism of fire. A surprise to be party leader, a shock to be fighting an election. So flanked by SNP candidates, swiping the Tories with National Service Swinney style.
The National Service the SNP is going to perform for Scotland is to remove this Tory government from office.
The SNP mantra, an attack on ABC, austerity, Brexit, cost of living, and a promotion of SNP achievements in 17 years of Scottish government.
We're helping with the cost of living through free prescriptions, the abolition of university tuition fees, and free bus travel for under-22s. In our NHS, Scotland has the best performing core A&E units in the United Kingdom for 9 years. On the economy, under the SNP, Scotland has had faster economic growth per head than the UK.
The Conservatives totally written off here, but what of Continuity Keir, as nationalists dub him? Repeatedly, they painted Labour as Tory light this afternoon on matters like Scottish independence or creeping NHS privatisation. However,
why are Labour doing so well in Scotland?
Well, the SNP has faced its difficulties. That's why I'm here, and we're getting out of those difficulties, and we're on the front foot. I've had a fabulous couple of weeks around the country with very, very energetic campaign teams.
He then claimed that a Labour government means 18 billion in spending cuts, and he promised to get that message across to Scottish voters. But after the catalogue of party implosions, John Swinney openly admitted this election is, quote, the biggest challenge the SNP's had for years. Labour, resurgent in Scotland, see it as their biggest opportunity.
Well, whilst it's true, latest indications are certainly showing this, that both the Lib Dems and the Tories could pick up a seat or two in Scotland. It is that broad brush picture. As in England, how big a hit are the Conservatives going to take? Here in Scotland, how big a hit are the SNP going to take? You note that what certainly seemed like ripple of nervous laughter when we asked the leader, John Swinney, this afternoon, why are Labour doing so well? So where does this really leave the one big issue which really demarcates, frankly, the SNP from the other big parties here in Scotland? Obviously, independence. Well, what they're saying on the doorsteps is what the polls are showing on the doorsteps, that folk in Scotland, not that different from the rest of the UK. They're looking primarily at social care, at education, health, and the cost of living. First off, independence well down the list. And it's on those key social issues, therefore, that the battleground is emerging. And it is, to coin a phrase now, the mother of all battles that's going to unfold here, the like of which, as John Swinney said, we haven't seen in an election in Scotland between Labour and the SNP in many a long year.